It was 1917, and a coded message helped move the United States closer to war. A few decades later, decrypted traffic would influence convoy routing, military decisions, and the planning of some of the most important operations of the 20th century. Long before the digital age, secret writing had already become one of history's quietest instruments of power, and wherever power hides, someone eventually learns how to follow it. The question became, if a message could be concealed, could it also be pursued? And once people learned how to do it well, secrecy lost something it never fully regained. The history of code breaking is the story of people learning to find structure in confusion and recover meaning from what was meant to stay hidden. Strictly speaking, a code usually replaces whole words or phrases, while a cipher transforms letters or symbols into different forms. History, however, was rarely patient enough to stop and arrange the labels. The real contest was simpler than the terminology. One side wanted meaning hidden, and the other wanted it back. Long before electronics, that contest was already underway. A king, merchant, diplomat, general, or spy could alter a message and trust that distance and uncertainty would do the rest. For quite a long time, that often worked. In the ancient world, secrecy was usually simple, but simple methods can be surprisingly effective when the person on the other end is hurried, tired, or overly sure of themselves. A message might be shifted, substituted, scrambled, or disguised just enough to make an enemy late. That is why systems like the Caesar cipher still matter, even though it is fragile by modern standards. It reminds us that early secrecy depended less on impossible mathematics than on stolen time. If your opponent stayed confused long enough, the method had already earned its keep. For centuries, that was often enough, but hidden writing always carried a weakness that sooner or later would become impossible to ignore. Language has habits. It bends in familiar directions, prefers some letters and pairings over others, and repeats itself more than its users tend to notice. A person can disguise a message. Disguising the deeper structure of the language carrying it is much harder. That realization changed the field. The first great leap in cryptanalysis came in the medieval Islamic world, where scholars began treating secret writing not as sorcery or puzzle box mystery, but as something that could be examined and understood. Instead of waiting for a flash of inspiration, they counted, they compared, sorted, and studied imbalance until the message began to undermine itself. Al-Kindi, writing in the 9th century, described what we now call frequency analysis. The principle was both elegant and devastating. If certain letters appear more often in a language, then even a disguised message may continue to reveal itself through those same patterns. The outer form has changed, but the underlying body is still there. That was one of the turning points that made code breaking something more than clever intuition. It became a discipline. The secret was no longer just meaning in disguise. It was structure, and structure can be measured. Once that door opened, cipher makers inherited a problem that feels very modern. The better code breakers became at finding regularity, the more urgently secret writing had to bury that regularity under thicker and more elaborate disguises. So ciphers grew more ambitious. If one alphabet could be counted, perhaps several alphabets could be layered together. If one substitution could be tracked, perhaps the disguise itself could keep changing as the message moved forward. That line of thinking helped produce polyalphabetic systems, first clearly advanced in Europe by Alberti and later associated above all with the name Vigenere. For a long time, they carried a reputation close to invincibility. History has always been rather fond of things declared unbreakable. it has also been very good at disproving them. Polyalphabetic ciphers were powerful because they disrupted the clean outline left behind by simple substitution. Instead of one stable disguise, letters could move through a shifting sequence of transformations, forcing codebreakers to search not only for symbols, but for cycles, spacing, rhythm, and recurrence. For a while, that was enough to make the wall look solid. But walls built on repetition usually crack where repetition lives. Repeated key lengths, repeated fragments, and repeated habits kept leaving seams in the design. Eventually, code breakers learned to work those seams open. In the 19th century, Charles Babbage broke a version of the supposedly unbreakable system without publishing it, and Friedrich Kasiski later published a method that made the weakness much easier to explain. Even layered secrecy, it turned out, could still give itself away whenever it repeated itself. That lesson never really expired. Complexity helps, but whenever a system becomes predictable, someone somewhere begins sharpening pencils, and history starts preparing another correction to human confidence. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, code breaking entered a new industrial phase of organized statecraft. Telegraphy accelerated communication, radio removed the need for physical couriers, and modern bureaucracy generated entire oceans of paperwork. Now, the challenge was not simply writing a message safely, it was writing one safely in a world where signals could be intercepted at scale, collected in bulk, timed, compared, and studied. That matters because code breaking has never been only about brilliant deduction. First, someone has to listen. Someone has to gather the traffic, preserve it, organize it, and notice which fragments of noise deserve attention. Before code breakers could think brilliantly, whole systems had to learn how to hear patiently. And once they did, the consequences became enormous. No longer was this about one captured letter in a saddlebag. Entire campaigns, alliances, supply lines, and diplomatic gambles could turn on whether a scrambled message remained unread for just a little longer. One of the clearest examples came in 1917 with the Zimmermann telegram. British cryptographers deciphered a coded German message proposing an alliance with Mexico against the United States. And when its contents became public, the message helped shift American opinion during the First World War. That was an early modern proof of concept. Code breaking did far more than explain the past. At its best, it reshaped the future while events were still underway. In the United States, William Friedman helped transform cryptology into a more rigorous profession. He brought mathematical discipline, better training, and a scientific seriousness that shaped generations of American cryptologists. But the story is stronger when his name is not left standing there by itself. Elizabeth Friedman was every bit as formidable, and together they helped show that code breaking was not stage magic, but rigorous thought under pressure. William helped systematize the field. Elizabeth showed again and again what a first-rate mind could do inside it. She broke over 12,000 messages sent by rum runners and later tackled wartime espionage traffic. Often, she did it by hand. No theatrical machine, no lightning in the windows. Just concentration, skill, and a refusal to be impressed by a page full of nonsense. She matters for another reason as well. She corrects one of the laziest myths in the whole subject. Code breaking is often remembered as a story of prominent figures, giant machines, and dramatic war rooms. Sometimes it was that, but sometimes it was also one person, one desk, one intercept, and a mind calm enough to treat chaos as something with an answer. Then the machine age arrived in earnest. Encryption devices such as Enigma automated complexity, pushing older pencil and paper methods toward their limit. Enigma was formidable, not because it was mystical, but because it combined mechanical sophistication with disciplined operating procedure. Its rotating components created constantly shifting substitutions, and daily settings changed the problem again and again. Speed now mattered as much as brilliance, and this part of the story deserves to be told properly. The defeat of Enigma was not a single act performed by one isolated genius. It was a chain of insight, preparation, cooperation, and relentless work. Before the most famous British breakthroughs, Polish mathematicians, especially Marian Rejewski, Jerzy Różycki, and Henryk Zygalski, made critical pre-war advances against Enigma. Their work provided foundations that Britain and its allies could build on once the pressure of war made time the most valuable thing in the room. By the time Bletchley Park expanded during the Second World War, codebreaking had become industrial. Men and women serving as mathematicians, linguists, engineers, classicists, clerks, teleprinter specialists, chess players, radio operators, and administrators became part of the same enormous effort. The romantic image is a solitary genius having a flash of revelation. The reality was less glamorous and far more impressive. Code-breaking at scale looked like systems, shifts, procedures, filing, engineering, traffic analysis, testing, correction, exhaustion, and starting again the next morning because the messages kept arriving whether anyone felt fresh or not. Alan Turing and Gordon Welchman helped develop the bomb, an electromechanical device which accelerated the search for Enigma settings. That mattered enormously. But success at Bletchley Park depended on much more than one machine or one celebrated name. It relied on captured material, operator mistakes, procedural habits, disciplined analysis, and the ability to move from raw intercepts to usable intelligence before the moment had passed. That last point is easy to miss. A code broken too late becomes history. A code broken in time can still help shape it. One of the great hidden victories of the modern age was built not by a mythic handful, but by a vast human network that history was far too slow to thank properly. Then the contest intensified again. As German systems grew more complex, code breaking was pushed toward electronics. The Lorenz cipher posed an even greater challenge, carrying high-level communications that demanded faster and more automated methods of attack. That pressure helped produce Colossus, first delivered to Bletchley Park in early 1944. Colossus now stands as one of the landmarks in the early history of modern computing. That is one of the great turns in this entire story. Machines built to recover hidden meaning also helped teach humanity how to build the digital age itself. The effort to read secret communications did not merely affect war and intelligence. It helped shape the tools that would later power computation on a scale earlier centuries could hardly have imagined. In that sense, code-breaking did not simply accompany modernity. It helped construct part of the machinery modernity would later run on. What began with altered letters and patient eyes eventually fed into processors, networks, and the computational logic of the world now surrounding us. That is a remarkable arc. A field devoted to exposing hidden patterns helped usher in the machines that now process almost everything. After the war, code-breaking did not vanish into a sealed historical chapter. It moved into the foundations of signals intelligence, computer science, cybersecurity, and modern secure communication. The old contest survived. It simply changed clothes again. Now, the battlefield included mathematics, electronics, software, and global networks. The struggle also moved into ordinary life. Banking systems, military communications, software updates, private messages, satellite links, and secure transactions all rest on the same central truth: information matters. If it can be protected, someone will try to penetrate it, and if it can be hidden, someone will try to uncover it. Even now, the oldest lesson still applies. A secure system succeeds only when it removes the clues an adversary can exploit, which means this story is not really about machines first. It is about structure, discipline, language, teamwork, patience, and the uncomfortable fact that people remain wonderfully repetitive under pressure. In one era, that meant tallying letters by lamplight. In another, it meant feeding paper tape through electronic machines at astonishing speed. Today, it may mean computing power operating at scales earlier generations would have mistaken for sorcery and then frowned at on principle. But the underlying act has barely changed. Someone hides meaning, and someone else studies the shape it leaves behind. And sometimes, against all expectation, the hidden thing speaks. That may be the deepest beauty in the subject. Code breaking exists where logic meets imagination. It asks for mathematics, but also judgment, and it rewards method, intuition, patience, and the refusal to be rattled by confusion pretending to be power. The codebreakers did more than uncover secrets. They altered diplomacy, shaped intelligence, shortened decisions, saved lives, influenced the rise of modern computing, and helped define the invisible systems that now surround daily life. Their work reaches from parchment and pencil to processors and encrypted phones. A story about how people learned to read the patterns other people could not quite stop leaving behind. And that may be the most human part of all. Our secrets have always depended on method, but our exposure has so often depended on habit. From hidden letters to hidden systems, code breaking changed war, intelligence, and computing by teaching humanity how to recognize itself inside secrecy. You're always welcome here, and remember, it's Illumentary.